slash a bot lane that can go even and be a bit more useful in terms of the team fights rather than a lane dominant one. There's the Graves for Inspired.
And the utility of Varus, of course, can't be underestimated. Incredibly valuable to have in the mid game in those skirmishes. See now how JDG want to round out their first rotation. But for now, it looks like matching AD with Aphelios. Always a character that can shake up the game a little bit, but we know how strong the Varus is early on. But Aphelios White Gun in a meta where heralds are so important is something that does have to be respected.
And this is a pick that I felt like Hope would lean on coming into this tournament, because Hope has always looked most comfortable on things like the Jinx or when we had the Zeri Sivir coming into the meta. So this is simply a pick in his wheelhouse. It's still very strong right now.
Yeah, hyper carry late game. You have to expect EG looking at something like a Tom here on 3 and then banning away the Renekton. We'll see. I think JDG's debating here. Do we pick something like Renata along those lines? Do we match jungle and give away the flex? Looks like that's what they might do, and they've locked in the Viego. So it will be a Sejuani top for 369. A little bit surprising, I think.
Yeah, and we've seen Impact actually has a champion that goes against us. He's brought out the Mordekaiser into this matchup, even in play-in. So it would even work considering that they do have an AD jungler to have that mixed damage on top side of the map. And again, I feel like pocket picks are just so strong because as JDG, how much practice you have going up against the Mordekaiser in that top lane matchup.
Yeah, you can pick up the Tom Kench here. I think something like a Lulu ban doesn't hurt too bad, doesn't it? Especially when they're playing things like Aphelios. They're probably going to lean towards an engaged support, maybe along the lines of a Mumu or a Renata perhaps, but I think Renata, Lulu are the two champions that you have to wonder EG are probably talking about, discussing. Yagao, a lot of Talia in the LPL playoffs. Azir was kind of like the two champions that he leaned towards.
Yeah, and Yagao, of course, a real terror when he is able to get out of the lane, when he's able to support those side lanes, see if he's able to find another champion where he can have that same impact, and now see what JDG want to ban away. They could limit some of these impact pocket picks. We've already seen the Mordekaiser, you highlighted it already. Instead, they could also take away some more of Jojo Pune's picks, and it looks like that's going to be the case since Silas is banned.
And I think it's the right call, right? We've seen Jojo has been the member for Evil Geniuses popping off and playing so far. He's been an absolute stud. And when he's going to go up against Yagao, who honestly has had the best season of his career in summer in the LPL, I think trying to set him behind and set Yagao for success is the right play.
Leaning towards more of control mages now with these bans coming out. Roaming and skirmishing is gone with Sylas, Akali, and Talia being down. There's a Leona ban to deny engage with the follow-up and things like Sejuani. I wonder if we're going to see some kind of Azir Victor picks here. Yagao didn't play any Victor in the LPL playoffs. He was just going Azir Talia most games. Things like Lissandra we saw crop up, but Lissandra Sejuani is not the solo lanes you want. There's the Mordekaiser ban you were talking about. Things like GP stand out to me a little bit now for Impact if he wants to lean towards something that can do well into the Sejuani. I think it'll be more of an R5 though, even though they show the Sejuani, because you want to see that they have an immobile bot lane, right? If they pick something like an Enchanter, the GP can work, but it does sting your draft a bit because then you do get counterpicked in mid.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious where EG are going to go because right now they don't really have a ton of engage. It feels like their composition is going to have to either play from ahead or they're going to have to pivot into something that could play for sides. But no, we're going to get the game plan that you talked about.
Yeah, and the only worry I have here is they can pick something with more mobile, right? If you picked Azir here on 4 and they went Victor Lulu, then GP gets more value. But now they have an Azir with a dash who can actually reposition in the GP ult, so it just makes it a little bit more of a sting, right? Aphelios Thresh is something we've been seeing in Champions Queue, especially range support's normally the kind of things that are good into Pumpkin.
And of course, Thresh naturally balancing out some of the weaknesses that Aphelios has as an immobile AD carry, especially against a champion like Gangplank. We know Gangplank is a nightmare for any AD carry without a dash. That said, really one big single target engage outside of the Thresh, outside of the Viego W. That's the Sejuani, which as we get later and later in the game is going to be less and less relevant against a champion like Tom Kench.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. There's the mobility from the GP4 pick just to deny that global. And now the question is, does Jojo have a strong enough counter to merit that pick? There's the Azir Victor, right? So if that's the control mage mid lane matchup that comes out, could have been something you got more value from, but still, regardless, EG's comp, really strong. A lot of AoE zone control, so many things that JDG have to be careful for. If you're walking up as an Aphelios into a GP ult, into a Victor ult, there's so much damage control that they have. JDG a little bit more single target damage focused in terms of engage, right? Sejuani ult hits into a hook. Need to be very careful, the carries of EG. The Tom Kench really will help with that.
I feel like that's the big difference to me though, is like, for AG, they want JDG to be walking into them, right? They still don't really have a great way of starting fights for themselves. Like, sure, carry can go for an ultimate, but point and click ability, skill shot ability, and Vulcan as well. Like, you have an engage on the Tom Kench, but it doesn't feel like enough to where for JDG, they can start decisive fights whenever they want. Sejuani, Thresh, Azir going in for the shuffle. I like the amount of agency they have, but the damage is at least there for EG.
Absolutely, and we have to see who is able to get set up on the objectives. That's going to be everything, because again, fighting into either of these teams could be a death sentence against Aphelios and Azir. You do not want to be running into them. Same is true of a GP, of Victor, and of Varus. So both sides, to a certain degree, a lot of control over those tight spaces. Early Drake stacking going to be huge.
Definitely is, and this is a comp where EG have a lot of scaling behind them. The only disadvantage on that scaling is the Graves doesn't have much setup to work with. When you think of Graves, things like Leona or an Enchanter mid, something that can actually set the Graves up at tank top so he can follow up. There's not much of it there, but the scaling is very powerful.
Yeah, and for the side of JDG, scaling's there, but we're gonna have to see what the top side's able to do. We've talked about, for them, it's been all about 369 and Kanavi, and it feels like, especially for 369, gonna be playing more of a facilitating role. So for EG, their standout carries have been mid-jungle, and it feels like both of them are set up for success.
Certainly is the case. Eyes really uninspired to see the kind of impact that he can have here. Graves, not the flashiest early game champion. He is often the catalyst for action for Evil Geniuses. See if that's the case this time around. Might have an explosive level 1 on our hands as JDG stacked up on the bottom side.
It could be a level 1 fight. Yagao is marking and baiting a little bit here. Vulcan's probably saying, I can knock this. If the Inspired dashes over this wall, he's in trouble. He needs to be really careful.
Hook gonna connect another top. Cats, they read him like a book. Vulcan running for his life, but an easy first blood for JDG.
And that's all scouting. That's all tendencies. EG wanted to get a ward level 1 to track the Viego pathing, and JDG just read them like a book. It was either Inspired dashing over who would fall, or the Hook hitting Vulcan over the wall without vision. You can't really blame Vulcan for that, right? He sees in his ear, he's marking him, walking up a little bit, Hook out of nowhere, he gets taken down.
And I love that you bring up that scouting, right? Because especially in group stage format where it's best of ones, getting a level 1 advantage is one of the best ways to try to find the wins, get yourself on the board, and make your way through group stage.
Definitely is, and now this Viego's got a longsword. Feels really good as a jungler to have this item because your clear is just innately faster with the AD, right? Sejuani also has an incredible leash. Impact here is just going to spot them out, give information to Inspired and say, hey, they're starting top side. And Inspired will be starting on the bot side of the map. Mismatch of junglers. Kanavi's clear just sped up a lot since that first blood.
Excellent start so far. See what Inspired can get back on the opposite side, see what the options are, what they can do with that jungle information that they do have. Open missing early on, with the range advantage they have, should be able to poke a lot, but of course, Tahm Kench a very difficult champion to get out of lane, and especially past the first level. Now the exhaust coming down, hold that thought. Hope backing up, so much damage coming out from as far as 3 stacks is, oh my god! The 2v2 versus the LPL.
The EG bot lane just 2v2 killed the first seed LPL's bot lane. Aphelios Thresh, they had counterpick support, they had counterpick AD, EG, and Ace here to play.
And we need to remember that this is with Cowrie coming in right before the LCS finals. Not too much time with him, but EG's bot lane are still making it work.
Fantastic turn. Exactly the thing that they needed after that first blood, after that untimely level 1. Kanavi still clearing quickly, but you can hear New York come alive for EG.
The crowd is rallied behind them, and good presence of mind here from Vulcan to just stay like, this AD carry is disrespecting us. He should not be walking past the wave and hitting us. Drops the exhaust instantly, calls Kaori to just start hitting. They managed to chase down, and they managed to get the kill.
And you gotta say overconfidence from Hope. You literally don't have abilities as a Aphelios on level 1. You wait till level 2, very strong in some of those trades, but stepping too far forward against a powerhouse like Varus, not respecting the exhaust coming out there from Vulcan.
And it even set up for Inspired, right? We saw him at the same time was able to make his way into Kanavi's jungle. He stole away the red buff. Now doesn't really have to give as much attention down towards the bottom half of the map. I mean, heck, Kaori still has summoners up and can now start making his way towards the top side.
Can indeed, and let's just note the Graves items. Had the health potion, he started a pink ward, he placed it on the entrance red of JDG side. You can see on the minimap there, Kanavi's just cleared it out. We'll move towards that bot side. Crab, Impact, getting some trades onto 369. Has the ignite, a lot of kill pressure, but mana quite low for a full combo.